Hey guys, how are you living out there in the wasteland? Wild Bill here, and welcome back to another installment of Gaslands Garage. It's good to have you in the shop, and we're going to talk today about removing tampos, a little bit more on it. Last time we spoke about tampos, we were talking about the chemical side of doing this. Now I'm going to get into the side that I sort of touched on in that video, but really didn't address in any capacity. This isn't necessarily my go-to. I don't really endorse it a whole lot. It gets into the abrasive side of removing a tampo, and that's not really where I want to go. I mean, it's not the pathway that I like to walk down. So if I'm removing tampos, I want to keep that gloss paint as much as possible, and that's why I don't really tap into this sort of side of it. But not to totally disregard it, because there are some purposes for doing it this way, such as if you wanted to retain some of the graphics, maybe give it a worn look. You like what's there, but you want it to give it the Gaslands touch, to make it look like the car's been around for a little while. Maybe even go as far as to not only remove the tampo, but even get it down into the paint a little bit to bring some of the metal through. So again, this does have a purpose to it, so it's not, without having to when we get into retaining the gloss, we want to have another sort of outlet for another effect, and that's why I keep this one in the toolbox. Basically, we're going to take a Dremel, as I mentioned in the last video. And with that, we have a soft, but it's a fuzzy kind of, I guess, woolen material. You can see it there. All right. And when this gets spinning at 35,000 RPMs, revolutions per minute, we are going to see this not be as friendly as it is if we're just there. So we're going to go after these tampos. It's going to get a little bit noisy, and we'll see where this goes. I am going to use this tool very gently to rub onto the tampo, and you're going to see that this tampo does come off relatively quickly with this. Now, with this, eye protection is a big deal. You might even want to go into some face protection, like a face shield. The eye protection is a must, though. You preserve your eyes. This could possibly throw up little bits of the tampo and the paint. You don't want to get that in your eyes, and especially if it was flinging, at a pretty good speed. So I've got eye protection on, and we're going to tear into this tampo. So again, a little bit of noise. I'm going to bring it up here to show you. There we are. You can see that this has a haze already starting to show up. The paint's being scratched, and that haze is coming in. We don't necessarily see that at all. Let's go back to what we did in our last video with the TurboBot, and you can see, that isn't. You can see the difference here. See that it's got a lot less gloss to it. You can see it marring the surface up. So that now what you're going to see with this tool versus using an acetone based product such as the Goof Off or the nail polish remover, or even straight acetone if you want to go that route. Let me continue on with this. And that's it. we're done. You do find that with right in these creases here, the Tampos still is set down in there. This rotary tool will not go down into these recesses like acetone will, and therefore it's really difficult to get the Tampos out of these creases with this method. In addition, you can see on these hinge areas, they're now silver. If you're doing this, you're going to find that high points and where the paint is at its thinnest, it's going to take that paint off real quick. And it's not necessarily a bad look to some extent. If that's what you're after, you wanted to, you do that, but it's something that you got to be aware of. Again, it's not my primary way of doing things, and I'm not a big fan of using the Dremel for that purpose, but it still resides in the toolbox. The other aspect of the last video is we went into, let me get that out of there. We went into getting into drilling the posts, and with that, we sort of left that unfinished. The second part of getting into the post is not just the drilling part, but tapping the post. And what is tapping, if you're not familiar with it? Well, tapping is where we take a tap, which is this tool right here, and you can see, let's focus, there we are. You can see it's got threads on it as well as a groove to it. There we go, that's a good one. And what this does is, as we screw this down into our post, it's going to basically carve, if you will, these threads into the post so that we can take our screw and have something to screw into. Now, to speak to the way this all works, you want to have a drill bit that marries up to your tap in the proper diameter. If you use a drill bit that is too large, the tap won't have any material to cut away. So the taps are generally calculated out, and you use for a 256 tap, which is this here, which accepts, makes threads for a 256 screw. You have a number 50 drill bit. Now, a number 50 drill bit is probably a little bit confusing to some, because most people are familiar with the drill bits being fractional measurements for inches or in millimeters, one or the other. There are different drill bits for when you get into the machinist world, where you have numbers and letters are also used, such as like a number 50 or an A bit or B bit. So there's bits here that you might not be familiar with, and the number 50 bit has these specifications to them right there. Okay, this is a number 50, 0.0700 inches, 1.78 millimeters. Not a very big drill bit at all. This is thin. If you're not used to using very thin drill bits, these can break easy if you're not careful with them. So, and then again, right here, for use with taps. So it's a specialized drill bit in that capacity, and that's where this is really what I have here with the drill bit and the tap itself. It's a married set. The number 50 is the perfect diameter for getting the proper percentage of threads being cut into the metal, which you're looking at 82 to 95% of the material being cut with the threads being left. So the aspect that we're going to get into is, if I can get in there, I've already tapped one, and there you go. You can see the threads that are in there, right? That's what we're trying to get accomplished here. That's what we're looking for. Nice threads that will accept our happy screw. The side of this here is, we also want to, I'm going to bring in the chassis for this Aristorat that we're working on, and we want the post to just be sitting at the very edge of the chassis. We don't really want it protruding out, and the other side is it's a little bit more acceptable to have it a little lower, but you know, you're using less threads then at that point. So I like to have it just as I have it here, to where it's just within the chassis. That gives me the best results. Now with the backside, I haven't touched the backside at all since drilling and removing the top post, which I could have done a better job with, but you know, that's the nature of the business here. With these plastic bodies, you can get into them so easy. So as we saw, this back post had a little bit of a raise up to it. I need to get my files, which I'm off camera here, and let's see, I want a flat one. I want my flat one. There we go. So you can see on this one here, see that angle? That angle is this side protruding up, which is coming up past the chassis. I'm gonna clean that up. And this taking the post down is going to make it flush. And also take off some of the burrs on the side. I mean, once you drill these things and get them out of the car, they can be a little bit sharp. I'm going to hit this one too, because there is a little bit of a sharp edge to that I missed the last time. There we go. See, it doesn't take much to do that. Alright, so now we've got that filed down. Still a little bit uneven, but I think we're going to be okay once it's in. It's going to be down past the chassis. So let's get into talking about the tap. With the tap, this here is going to be screwed in, and then it's going to start to make its cuts into the sidewall of the post in the hole that we've drilled. The other aspect of this hole that we're going to be working with, I did come back and drill this to a depth of 3/16. That's going to give me the relief that I need for this to go in, and that 3/16 is the length of the shank of the thread of the screw that it's going to be taken in. It's a 256 3/16. So to do this, it's really a simple process, but these really are fragile. If you're not accustomed to this and you've never done it, I would advise you buying a couple of these. One, it doesn't hurt to have extras, because they do dull out on you over the course of using them. I've had this one for a while now, and it's starting to see its better days, but it still works fine, but not as good as when it was day one. The other side of it is, if you break it, you know, you're done until you get another one. So with that, it's good to have a couple of spares of these, as well as the number 50 drill bits. You get pushing too hard on a number 50 drill bit, you'll too much pressure will snap those as well. So these are like, I don't want to say they're like glass per se, because you know they're not glass, they're made of metal, but they certainly can act like glass. So with that in mind, I've got a little bit of wax off camera here. I'm going to put my tap into the wax just to give it a, and not a whole lot, just a little bit to give it a little bit of, I guess, lubricant. And I'm going to start this, and I like to start it by hand because it gives me some control and some finesse and some touch. And I felt it grab right there. And then I come back in with the T-handle, which I've got sized to the bit. And now I'm gonna go into this a couple turns, and then, well, not really a couple turns, but like I don't know, half a turn, not nearly a full turn, and then back it out. And I don't know if you're seeing this on camera, but I'm getting these little small metal fragments coming out of this here. Now, you want to keep this tap even, straight, whatever you want to call it, with the post. All right, you don't want to do any form of drifting off on an angle with this, because you will snap your tap off into that hole. Now I'm going to pull it back out. Right, see the metal fragment there? Right, that's clearing those fragments out. If you let those fragments build up, it'll bind and it'll cause the tap to snap. Now that's really awkward for me to work with up there, and I don't want to break this tap. So I'm going to come back down here where I'm accustomed to working with it. All right, gently. Once you start to feel it slow down a little bit, back it off. And with backing it off, we're backing the tap out, and you can see the metal fragments there. Right, there's a good one right there. And then return back in, and you're going to go till you hit the bottom of the post, or the depth that you've drilled to. And then once you do, which is where I'm at, stop. Do not force this. If you do, you're gonna break the tap. And then again, gently, easily, because if you break this tap off in this, if you break this tap in that post, it's game over. You're finished. There we go. Get you. You see? Now, if we look down into this post, which we just drilled, or just tapped, let me get you. Come on, camera focus. There you go. Right there. Threads cut into the inside. So this is now ready. I mean, we can strip this now, and I do this before stripping. I do it, you know, because I'd hate to go through the whole process of stripping, painting, and then come in with a tap later and then snap the tap in a post, and everything that I've done on the car is all for naught. At that point, Could you glue it? Yeah, you could certainly glue it, but I'm sort of a perfectionist because of the restoration side, to where taking cars like this guy here and giving him new life. I mean, he's broke, and he's got little flea bites on him, which are just little bits of corrosion. So he's gonna get a second life, and with that, doing that kind of work, it sort of lends into the fact that I become a perfectionist, and with this kind of work, so I don't really like the glue. I'm going to take this, after I put this on, I found that this is still sitting a little bit high, and I'm going to come back in, lower it a little bit more. Going around the edge with the file also gives me some relief for when I snap it back together. There we are. I need to clean up the plastic a little bit, but you can see it's sitting just below the top surface here, but not lower than the inside of the chassis. So that's how to drill and tap. I hope that this has been a good video for you, where you picked up some tips. This stuff is easy to do. It really is easy. You don't need to be a machinist. You don't need to have a degree in engineering or anything like that. This is experience. I've done this type stuff for some time now. I learned it from my grandfather, like years and years and years ago. I mean, I'm 53, so I learned that when I was a little kid, spending some time down in his basement in his shop. He'd show me all kinds of stuff. So again, I've been doing this a little while, so there is a touch to it, and it's a touch that I have, a touch that you will have to develop as you do this. And it's easy to do, but it's one of those things that can be, for some people, difficult to master. Some people have the natural touch, to where as they're finding their way with learning this, they just fall right into it easily, and others not so much. They'll push the edge of it, have some degree of being impatient and wanting to do this quick, and this is something you cannot do quick. You have to take your time. It's a matter of feeling what's happening as you're going in with that tap into the metal. So give it a try, though. It's not expensive, especially 256 taps and drill bits, the number 50 drill bits, whatever the equivalent is for you guys in the UK and in the EU, or wherever you are where you're using metrics. These, you're going to use an M series screw. I use a button head fastener to this. It's a excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself. I use a 256 button head, which actually looks like the original rivet to some capacity, or the original smash post. I don't really like calling them rivets, but for those of you out there, a lot of people do call them rivets. But they look a lot like the way it was manufactured. Let's put it that way. So in the metric parts of the world, an M series button head fastener is what you're after. The equivalents, again, I couldn't speak to exactly what they are. I used to live in England a while back. I lived there for 4 years. If I was there, I'd do the research for you, but in not being around the shops and seeing what's available to you, I really hate to misspeak to giving you some bad info. So that is what I'm using, you might be able to go to Amazon or someplace online and get yourself a 256 tap, a number 50 drill bit, and even 256 by 3/16 fasteners, button head fasteners, and follow along exactly as I'm doing here. But if you need to make those modifications to make it easier on yourself with your supply chain, feel free to do so. So with that, that's going to wrap this up. Remember though, I'm going to tell you again, because you can never hear it enough. When you're in the wastelands, playing your Gasland, please, please always use maximum carnage, because that is always the best option. Until next time, guys, I'm out of here. Wild Bill.